or to get the audio feed. Right, I'm going to take the room number off you for a second, because I'm going to need to. One 330. Okay. Okay, so you should now get, once you've gone into that room, a short quiz.
We'll try both ways now. We'll keep moving the screen. We'll try to do it.
Yep, I'll go back now. It's just, obviously, I need to start the quiz as well. Just put it in, it's fine. It must have been static.
If it was like impossible.
Yeah, I just like to do it on individual rather than shoot them. Some opinions. Some people have opinions. We can have a chat about it.
We've got real technical issues to keep doing.
It's doing the same for everyone. That's been quite easy. a team van. Comments are in the next activity. Okay, right, I'm going to give you 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1, and I'll end the activity there. Okay, so I'm just going to download a report of that. There we go, and have a quick look at it. See some of the things that came out. Apparently, I'm an administrator. Okay, so yeah, there'll be some blanks in there. So what have we got in there? Some of the common factors: accessibility and adoption and uses by tutors and one by students. So it's quite conclusive that one of the main factors that you think is accessibility. And would anyone like to sort of expand on that as to why they feel? Who put accessibility to start off with? Okay. Should we go with Andrew? What are your thoughts on that? Let's expand a little bit. Access in terms of network. Okay. That's a good point. And also, there's the other side of it. Yeah, the timetable e-learning there are timetable slots from what I can see. It's about an hour or 2 hours where essentially facilitating classes and so that they're in the room. But that doesn't mean that students can't do the e-learning outside of those lessons. So accessibility then. Accessibility does become a problem, not just because of network access, because the other thing that's in my head is we're in danger of having maybe a two-tiered society where you've got that has and that have not here. So the students that have got that access won't necessarily learn, maybe fall behind. Unless, of course, they're highly active learners. But then how many of our learners are actually highly active, and at what levels does that start to come in? So,
What is blended learning?
okay, blended learning is a term which just means, let's see, I don't want to go too far, so the next exercise I'm going to ask you to define it for your own purposes. But blended learning essentially, in my eyes, and it doesn't have to mean I'm right, is essentially the use of e-learning or online resources or online teaching methods or online assessment methods in coupling with traditional teaching methods. So essentially, there doesn't necessarily need to be much of a difference. The activities that you set, for example, might be the same. It's just that they're recorded or undertaken using a computer, which, depending on which curriculum area you're in, quite heavily they do that already. So, for instance, Rex with maths, quite heavily they use computers, and I assume with functional skills in English as well. If we get the rooms with computers, as long as the media students aren't stealing the rooms, it's all good. Everyone's happy. Okay, so just moving on to the. I suppose we can spend a minute just on adoption and usage by tutors. Who said adoption and usage by tutors? There were 4 or 5 of you. Okay. And Alex, why do you think that's important?
There's so many platforms and systems out there for it now. I mean, it's just a massive area. Well, it is. And to be a tutor is not absolutely spot on with all the new basic technology systems. It can be really overwhelming for parents if not. If they go to use iPad, how are they going to be managed and mind level learning as well? So there's lots of training and data.
So that kind of thing's already been identified, not addressed, because the link programs I think intended to be about bringing people up to speed, I guess, if those don't necessarily have those skills. So with the adoption, like you said, the overwhelming number of platforms, does it mean that we have to standardise the platforms that we use? Or is it really just down to autonomous teaching practices, so long as we've got, say, for instance, one standardised platform like we already have, and as long as everything is linked in some way to the DLE, then we're doing everything we can to make it accessible in that respect. And by providing facilitated opportunities in classrooms, however that works, and obviously that's going to be interesting when we start this next year, isn't it? Because the ground running.
Also for us, in terms of as we work across curriculum at every level, what is going to be delivered, because if we're not kept in the loop by the tutor, if there are any anomalies within or glitches in the system, or if learners are going to say to us, excuse me, can you help me?
Yeah.
It's really important
all
that
of a
we work
sudden,
really closely with the tutors.
So that's worrying. All of a sudden, LSAs are going to become tech support.
Well, quite.
So essentially, there shouldn't really just be an LSA. There should be an LSA and a Simon Danby in every room, or an LSA and a Steve White in every room. Sorry? Oh, yeah, you're going to say that. Yeah. That's another thing. Attendance is going to be a factor, isn't it? So what's your skeptical as to whether they'll even come in? Yeah, I mean, is it intended that we're going to take registers? Yeah, there'll be registers taken. Can you, what's the discussion over here? My understanding is that it's a session that's not, it's being designed by tutors, they're not tutor-led, they're not tutor-led.
How do LSAs?
My understanding is that it's being set, it's by a tutor. No, we don't get contacts. That's a good question. But that's, this is about the discussion. I'm not going to give you the answer, but I would suggest that hopefully, with effective planning, that once you've done it once, then at least that task the following year one should then be in place. So this year, if it's done right, the following year we might be in a position where we can eventually roll out another session. But there are other things, let's move on from this point, because there are other things you can do in that session beyond just teaching, because it could just be about assessment, formal assessment, and then as long as you've got the time to do the feedback, what if it's holiday feedback or something like that? And we know that through the systems. Apart, if there's an LSA in the room and they're logged into a system, we've got a fair chance that we know that there is.
There'll be EBS registered.
EBS registered as well? Yep. Okay. So let's just move on to your next activity. This one is another one. It's on Padlet.com. And it's a discussion activity. I'll give you all a number. There's like 5 different statements that I've made, and I'd like you to discuss them, turn into pieces, agree with them, and on that page put your own comments. So you guys can be number 1, you guys can be number 2, you guys can be number 3, 4. I know it's the same way, it's just different.
It's going to annoy everybody. Yeah.
Right. Have you got a license? That's quite good. It feels like just snippet Like I said, the opinions displayed on here are not necessarily the opinions of the college. They're not necessarily right either. It's just what I've.
Yes, I'm saying we give them a So one of the issues
ICT is. I don't know, it depends on where you put it. If I refresh it, that's what Johnny is. Oh yeah, it sometimes takes a bit of time, like you said, refresh it. I could refresh it. Oh look.
Yeah.
Yeah. When there's any teaching, Right then, we're on with time now, so let's draw that activity to a conclusion by 30-second summary by each group. We'll go in reverse order. So, can I have a spokesperson from this group, please? Rex?
Yeah, I think what we saw as one of the sort of problems was that to make sure they engage, you've got to make sure that somehow you're not just giving them a lot of material that they're not going to be able to, not interested in, that doesn't engage with them, they don't feel challenged by it. So we thought really actually what it brought out was all the very similar things you think about when you're preparing a session normally.
Yeah.
That you have to have short things that they're going to feel that they are challenged by, they have to be able to move on, they have to feel like they're making progress. One of the problems we saw was that really ideally they need someone to be able to say, okay, you've looked at that, what were the issues? You know, so they were challenged a little bit beyond sort of simply some sort of textbooks, you know, there's someone they can interact with. Which I suppose you could do with a blog.
I suppose there's a similar challenge there as well, isn't there? When you're in a classroom environment and it comes to knowing who's struggling, beyond those that actually put their hand up, you're in a similar position. You know, you've got a circle of a room, but if you've got a room of, say, 20 students, and you've got 5 that are struggling, and it's really challenging. I'm sure you all have been in that position, if not in a room with 20 students who don't get it. 20 students who don't get it. But I quite like your system, although I can't get onto it, but the BTSB system is excellent for that. It's very much like an example I'm going to quickly skip onto, where it's modular. So it's like diagnostic, it recognises where the areas for improvement are, and you can spend your time, if you use that tool, working specifically with a student, either testing that they've improved, setting assessment challenges. What other sort of things would you do?
but using that as a tool.
Yeah.
I mean, I think really you've got to actually try and almost take the opportunity to take them away from it. So you're going to use it to keep a few entertained, but you can concentrate on those who aren't making progress themselves. And one of the difficulties with anything like that is it does all the same very quickly. So yes, it's a good tool, but try and for a 16 to 19-year-old, more than about half an hour, and they're going to be thinking forward now. It's be different.
Great. Right, let's rush on. I'm mindful of time. I've only got probably about 8 minutes left. Gareth, John, you or Benny?
What's that? What we said?
Just a summary.
We kept number 3, so electronic saying electronic. We thought it was a broad agreement with the statements that were made on there. But it came to the conclusion that makes effective communication so a good thing. However, in class, you can be excellent research with that. But invariably, it's YouTube, social media, students distracted by.
What's your opinion on the use of social media to try and engage students, or the use of YouTube to try and engage students?
I have used YouTube videos in my classes. But then they say, well, the band's crap, I don't like them. If I do.
It's always something, isn't it?
Yeah, they don't like what I've chosen for them, or.
Especially if you try and go an extra mile, and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to find some examples that really put out there positive messages in terms of equality and diversity. I find really interesting stuff from around the world, and they're like, why are you showing us this?
Yeah. Verbally, I think my class is, if I showed them Eminem for an hour and a half every week, it would be enough. It's been wonderful.
Just go off him after a while.
Maybe I should try it because he's particularly good. So.
And then it is. Spokesperson for this group, please.
Well, just remind us to get exactly what I'm speaking
Well, whatever you've been discussing, a summary of it.
yeah, so we were just talking about what you use it. So when he's talking about oh yeah, we were just saying that it's quite hard, like what you said earlier about you can't always say that every household's got the access to the media because they don't. And also, a lot of students I've had this year use it as an ongoing excuse. Oh, last night I was stepped down and they wouldn't let me on the internet. And then you've almost got to accept that because you can't prove or disprove it, you know. So you can't rely on it totally. I can't.
So it might be playing Call of Duty for 4 hours straight, and then maybe, well, that's it, no, right?
Yeah, or I've fallen off the step, so I'm not going to get on the internet for at least a minute.
I can break your internet.
Yeah, or even in makeup, these tech, you know, I can't get on the internet. I found it, I was constantly against that all the time, you know.
In that same vein, I think there's a risk that quite often we make the assumption, and it's not necessarily true, that all students of a certain age, say 16 to 18, who are particularly interested in this case, are experts in technology. And it's entirely the opposite. They know how to do exactly what they know how to do in the same way that we know what our like works. So whatever we do on a regular basis is the same thing. So they post messages on Facebook on a regular basis. But as soon as you start asking to do something like work in a virtual collaborative environment, or work on Drive and work together at the same time, it does become quite alien. And so the amount of time we're going to have to spend training them, never mind training us on how to use this equipment, there's going to be a lot of time spent on training that.
There's another issue there as well. You've got learners and learning difficulties. Typically, if they're presented with a screen, it's got a reflex on it. If we allow learners with visual difficulties or who have reading difficulties, then you've got to.
I'd like to hope they had a screen reader.
You would like to.
I'd like to hope
But I'm not talking about. I'm not
Sorry, Sarah.
No, you are having interrupted when I just thought of something.
But it's not just people that's sort of moderate to severe learners. We're talking about your average learner who's struggles with literacy.
Yeah. Oh, but it's pretty much our frequent flyers, aren't they? So with that, what we're saying is, okay, it's all about personalised learning, but there's a risk that actually personalised learning might not work, and people could quite easily get more or less behind than they are already. So it's very much down to the same kind of issue we're facing in teaching in class, with a few extra new applications.
That was quite a negative thing that I was saying before, and I don't want it to be negative. Because my son's sick, and every weekend at the minute he's coming home, oh mum, I've got to look on so-and-so website. I'm like, great, another job. So like in Easter Cup, it will be, he's 6 now and he's having to do that at home like every weekend. So like if I keep doing this job, I will notice with Easter Cup that it is almost expected of the learning that they will have this e-learning. So there's no point in being negative to it.
There'll be a bit of a gap for us, but
yeah.
Because it's obviously going to take some time to filter through, but it's obviously going to be a case of if those younger learners were already using it by the time
yeah.
they still have the skills that we need to have.
It's normal, won't it? Yeah.
So, this group, you were concerned with some kind of more accurate definition. Is that what you worked on? How did you go off on a
Well, everybody's been talking about blended learning because if the students are doing it from home, but not necessarily not.
No, you can quite be a facilitating environment. I'd like to feel that we're not just talking about an hour-long session or 2 hours, but that is being tactile quite a lot. I'm trying to figure that there's more to it than that maybe we're expecting them to work. Some key things: empowerment, responsibility, and accountability. And seeing that maybe shift a little bit more towards the learner would be interesting. And it would never be a bad thing, and what I can do is become more creative and critical. The risk there for me is that, like you said, the lower level students, entry 3, level 1, level 2, it's kind of almost being thrust upon them a little bit early. Brilliant.
Is it in the, I think it's an hour, is it for lower levels and an hour and a half for the higher level courses? As I understand. But the one plus point of this is because learning support's spread quite thin in college now.
Incredibly thin. It's like an atom.
No, but at least we'll get them through the door, because half the thing is that when they need support, you can. Sorry. Well, no, but you can.
You'll get more of them through the door.
At least they recognise it.
Yeah.
So it will work.
Absolutely. Okay, so I didn't promise I would give you some examples, so I'm going to try and quickly just give you. I'll focus on the internal capacity. What we have internally currently, and I'll rattle it off and try and give you some examples. I think I'm logged in on Moodle as well at the same time. Okay, logged in. Some example courses. That one I'll do. Okay. So from the notes, what we can do already. The key things we can do, obviously. Things like a repository of learning resources. So that could be links to books, it could be books written by you, it could be workbooks written by you with assessment built in. So for instance, clauses, open answer questions, multiple choice questions, where you can monitor what's going on. We can monitor what's happening within a learner's group, so you can see who's engaged with an activity or engaged with a resource. We can see on an individual level specifically how many times someone's looked at a resource. So say for instance you've got a book that you put out there, a worksheet for example, it just has to be like a handout but electronic. They've read it maybe 15 times but they've not attempted the plenary off of it. Or if they have, then they've not achieved a score where you want to move on or whatever. You can at least then go and do one-to-one with that student. So there's some benefits there. I like the idea of using Moodle for reading-based activities quite extensively. So that reading could be reading as in watching videos, it could be reading as in reading the text, it could be reading as in listening to something on SoundCloud or on iPlayer on a radio station. And then they follow that up. So you give them something to read that's of use, and then lead them into an assessment activity. And that's perfectly achievable within the environment that we already have to a very strong extent. You could create a blog, and I'm not saying an external blog, and I'm sure it's quite nerve-wracking to even think of putting your thoughts externally. I've had a bash at myself. I've only done one post so far, but I'm trying to be good about this, so this is something that I'd like to do. For my profile, my blogs. Blogs, there we go, sorry. So putting a blog on, showing about your experience. For me in my area, and you know, kind of got to translate this to your own circumstances, that I talk about something that's particularly relevant at the time to media students, for example. And then I could build a task off the back of this. But it doesn't have to go external. It doesn't have to go outside of the walls of the college. So therefore, it's just for the learners, and it's not like some kind of personal thing. It's just a task, another activity. But the blog's really useful for that. So you can write a short article and then ask them, you know, the higher level learners, do you agree? Do you disagree? Justify your answers. Do some reading. Here's some sources. Are they doing extended reading? They're going beyond that. You can link directly into the library service, and I do frequently do that. List texts that they're supposed to be consulting. My preference is for electronic text, because if they're already on the VLE, then they're not going to worry too much about clicking on that link and then going to the book. However, my experience has been that if I send them to a physical copy, getting them to get out of the room and go and physically get it can quite often only lead to the most active learners again doing that. And so you still get that gap. So just to, I could go on, I'm not going to, but you could use it for tutorials, online tutorials through chat. You could use it to facilitate face-to-face tutorials using third party. So for instance, third party might be using Hangouts, which is one of my favorite applications at the moment. You can do small group tutorials, up to 8 people, or you can do workshops where, for instance, like this, I'm recording now. I'm not really stood in front of the camera an awful lot because I've been floating around the room. But this session, facing this way, not facing that way, is going out onto YouTube now as we speak. Now that's good for me because I'm quite lazy as a media tutor. I like to record things and put them up online, but I don't necessarily want to spend hours editing them when all I really need is a record for someone. And the argument is that students won't turn up if you're putting everything on Moodle. You have to be a bit clever about how you do that then, don't you? You have to reveal it after the session, maybe. But the benefits outweigh the drawbacks for me, because students who have been in the session deserve a chance to review those as many times as it takes to get what has been discussed. It takes me at least 3 times to read a text before it sinks in, especially a high-level text. Why would I expect my students to have to do it the first time round? And I think I'll draw that to the conclusion at the end. Sorry I didn't manage to get all the way through, but Hangouts is rocking my world.